Essendon Footy Club cutting their CEO. Let's have a look. Hello everyone, Florian.Heise here and welcome to another episode of HeiseSays. Grab your stein of coffee. Let's have a talk about what's happened at Essendon Footy Club where they fired or their CEO resigned after just one day. Okay? Now, I'm not that big on the AFL. I've seen a few games live here in Brizzy. But last time I was really, excited about it was back when I had AFL on the Nintendo back in the 80s. I grew up in Victoria. AFL was everywhere, and they only had the Bears here in Brizzy. So I'm a little bit out of date, but I know who the Bombers are. First, let's start by having a look at this statement from the Footy Club. And then I want to look at an article that's been put out, or just some comments that Kosh has said. And I want to throw a few ideas at you at how we should look at this, because a lot of people are getting outraged that, the CEO has resigned. Let's start by looking at this. Okay. Statement on behalf of David Branham. The board of the Essendon Footy Club has accepted the resignation of Andrew Thorne as CEO after one day. Wonder if he'll get paid. So, the board of the Essendon Footy Club has accepted, as soon as the comments relating to a 2013 sermon from a pastor at the City of the Hill Church came to light this morning, we acted immediately to clarify the publicly espoused views on the organisation's websites, which are in direct contradiction to our values as a club. Now, there are some statements that were made by a pastor referring to abortion and homosexual marriage. I understand. I haven't looked at them up. But does that really matter? That's another question. Okay, so here's the first point I will put to you. When you're looking for a CEO, you kind of want to look at their past, their resume, the other organizations they're involved with, don't you? Isn't that important? And he happens to be involved in this church. Wouldn't you have looked into that? Shouldn't have that been something you did before you even offered someone the job? Just bear that in mind. So I would argue this might be that their recruitment process wasn't that rigorous, but you're looking at a sermon from a pastor at the church nearly a decade ago. Did he even go to the church then? Was he even a member then? Maybe he was going at a different church. Or does it even matter? It's not like he was the pastor, was it? It just shows you that the optics here, and it's more to do with publicity, I'd say. Essendon is committed to providing an inclusive, diverse and safe club where everyone is welcome and respected, unless probably you're a member of the City of the Hill Church, perhaps. Just saying, putting it out there. The board made clear that despite these not being views that Andrew Thorburn has expressed personally, okay, so he hasn't even said these views himself, and that were also made prior to him taking up his role as chairman, he couldn't continue to serve in his dual roles at the Essendon Footy Club and as chairman of the City of the Hill Church. Wow. So, that wasn't a condition of his employment. They gave him a job. Then they discovered this sermon that a pastor made a decade ago, and then they wanted him to quit from his involvement in the church. Now, let's bring up a concept here that I want to put to you. Freedom of association. So, this is from Wikipedia, the definition I'm using. Freedom of association encompasses both an individual's right to join or leave groups voluntarily, the right of the group to take collective action to pursue the interests of its members, and the right of an association to accept or decline membership based on certain criteria. Now, involvement in a religious organization or religious beliefs, those are protected. Those are meant to be protected terms. You're not able to discriminate against that. Or should we be able to? Are we at a point now in a multicultural society that we need to remove some of these anti-discrimination laws to allow businesses, groups, and individuals to discriminate how they choose and allow the market to sort it out? I can't imagine any of the Karens in Australia would like that. I think it would simplify things to a much greater extent, but we're tending to go the other way, where even your speech is being policed, your social media posts, if they don't align with the mainstream narrative, you'll get done for. So, I mean, this is a bit of a. It's not very impressive. It's not very impressive what the club has done here. So the board respects Andrew's decision. We are deeply committed to our values and support wholeheartedly the work of the AFL in continuing to stamp out any discrimination based on race, sex, religion, gender, sexual identity, or orientation, or physical or mental disability. You've just discriminated based on religion. Wouldn't you say? Isn't that what this appears to be? I want to stress that neither the board nor Andrew was aware of the comments. So he wasn't even aware of them from the 2013 sermon until we read about them this morning. I also want to stress that this is not about vilifying anyone of their personal religious beliefs, but also about a clear conflict of interest within an organisation whose views do not align at all with the values as a safe, inclusive, diverse and welcoming club for our staff, our players, our members, our fans, our partners and the wider community. Acting CEO Nick Ryan will continue in his role whilst we commence the process to appoint a new CEO. So, I mean, there you go, guys. This is all you need to know. It really seems like his religious beliefs, the fact that someone gave a sermon at this church a decade ago and some people with political activists or maybe religious activists put it out there, or Dan Andrews made comments about it. There you go. So maybe this is a political thing more than a religious thing, and it's just being used to attack religion. So let's have a look at what good old Kosh has to say here, because it's a bit of rubbish, to be honest. I don't think much of Kosh. The last time we talked about him was when he was going off on Pauline Hanson. And she was actually quoting something that we could prove with facts. Sunrise host. Do people even watch Sunrise anymore? Koshi has savaged a senior pastor at the church attended by former Essendon chief executive Andrew Thorburn. Mr. Thorburn resigned from the role just 30 hours into the job after he was condemned for his links to the church. I mean, the church's controversial views on abortion and homosexuality were found to be in direct contradiction to the values of the Essendon Football Club. I would hazard a guess that their views are not that controversial. They're probably just biblical. And I suspect the club maybe doesn't really read the Bible, or Koshi either. I get the feeling. You know, there's a lot of soft Christians out there, a lot of social Christians, I'd say, that treat their religion as a social club. Don't even abide by any of the edicts or any of the religious teachings, or probably haven't even read the Bible. I mean, look at the number of Christians that vote for the Labour Party who push through abortion. There you go. Right there. I don't see how those two things can align, Christianity and allowing people to commit murder. And I'm speaking from someone who has a child who most people would have aborted in the womb. You know, that's the sad reality. You know, killing the genetically impure because they're an inconvenience. Yeah, we really haven't changed that much from the Roman times, guys. You know, people think we're more civilized. We're not really. We're not. The Sunrise Morning Show invited City on the hill, senior pastor Guy Mason, who responded to public criticism of the church's values. Even the most conservative bloke I think I know, Peter Dutton, called your views an abomination, Kosh said, to round out a heated interview with the pastor. Mr. Mason was staunch in his defence of his church's values and through his support behind the former Essendon boss. I know Andrew to be a great man. He is a man of integrity, generosity, warmth, and he's a man of faith, and I admire that in him, Mr. Mason said. Kosh moved swiftly to confirm whether former Essendon boss aligned with the church's statements on abortion and homosexuality. You need to ask him his views. Yeah, well, you need to read the Bible. I mean, come on. He wouldn't be chairman of your board unless he shared the same views as the churches does. The morning show host pushed the pastor, asking the church leader to explain statements made by the church in past sermons. But comparing abortion to the Holocaust is not love. It's not inclusion. Well, killing babies isn't love or isn't inclusion. Okay, this is going on throughout the entire world. There's a reason why there's no Down syndrome people anymore in Iceland. Because they're tested for, they're deemed genetically imperfect, impure, or inconvenient, so they're terminated. The sins of the father are passed on to the child. The father did something wrong, kill the child. Of any time in human history, the quality of life that we have, the technology that we have, the access to resources that we have in great abundance, it is just ludicrous that we are causing such harm to the most vulnerable in our society purely for the sake of convenience. And I guess you can't really appreciate that until you've gone through the process. And, I mean, we were, speaking from personal experience, when we found out in the pre-scanning, because we wanted to get pre-scanning regardless, it wasn't going to affect our decisions, but you need to, well, it's sensible to prepare because the birth can be quite different. And we were quite concerned. We were going through a mourning process. We were worried about it. We were scared. These are all normal things. And then years later, well, it's a different world. You can't imagine life without your little child running around. It's kind of sad. People don't know what they've lost. There are so many other churches that are tolerant, are inclusive. You read the same book. Why don't you have this hard line and not so loving, what? And not so loving view? Because churches are different. Some churches are really quite soft to the point of where it's hard to even see them as churches. It's just nuts. It's more a social club, honestly. I know this from my own seeking. Mr. Mason said Kosh was taking a quote from 10 years ago and the statement was not meant to be inflammatory. I'd use different words today, he said. Finally, Kosh called to question how the former AFL boss was going to stand up during the upcoming AFLW Pride round and support the celebration of the game's LGBTQIA+. Is it getting that long, community? Why did he apply for the job when he knew the values of the Essendon Football Club were completely different to the values of his church and faith? He asked. When the Pride round comes up in the AFWL, a couple of weeks, how could he honestly stood up there and encourage the sentiment around pride? Didn't pride used to be pride is a sin. It's funny how that's the term that's been used. I mean, since when? I don't know. None of the gay people I know and have worked with and have employed, it wasn't like the core of their whole bloody identity, wasn't it? They're just normal people. I guess that's the difference in meeting people in normal life as opposed to people who make it their whole bloody career, pretty much. A footy club is about loving the game and the jumper, and it's bringing people together of all different walks of life, Mr. Mason replied. Okay, so there we go. Let's have a talk about this one. So what do you think the solution is here? Should the CEO have resigned? Or is this just showing you where the trend is going in Australia? If you're a Christian and have traditional Christian views, you're getting ostracized and pushed out of jobs and opportunities are being disappearing. I don't think the same thing would happen for other religious groups or organizations. If you had a Jewish business owner or CEO, would the same thing happen? Or what about a Muslim CEO? Would the same thing happen? Would the public be as quick to attack it? Perhaps, perhaps not. Or is this just the right of this organization to pick and choose who they want to have in the organization? Should we open that up to everyone in the country? Should we remove these discrimination laws and allow every organisation to pick and choose who they want to be members or who they want to employ? What's wrong with that? But it's going to go both ways then. The religious organisations are going to discriminate against who they employ and who's allowed to partake in their organisations, what weddings they choose to perform. Somehow, I don't think the mainstream would accept that. I think they only want to push one way. What do you reckon, everyone? Let me know your thoughts and opinions on this one. It seems like a lot of bullshit, to be honest. A sermon from a decade ago. Was he even there? Anyway, thanks for watching. Let me know your thoughts and opinions on this one. Check out my other channels, HeiseBim and HeiseSays International. And if you want to support us, there are a few ways you can. Financially on YouTube or Patreon, using our referral links, buying our pocket squares, or calling us if you need an architect. Take care, everyone. Have a great day. And I'll see you in the next episode of Heise Says. It's like firing someone because they watched a YouTube video years ago.